Hello and welcome to Cheetah TV. My name's Brian Badger from the Cheetah Conservation Fund. And continuing with the theme of conservation through collaboration, we're going to talk to one of our partner organizations that we've worked with over the years, and that is GARC, which is the Global Alliance for Rabies Control. Now, I had the pleasure of catching up with Dr. Andre Coetzer in South Africa, and he's the Chief Executive Officer of GARC, and he's spent decades designing and implementing technology-driven solutions that focus on empowering stakeholders to make a lasting impact in their rabies elimination efforts. So it's all about sharing information, sharing data. And I asked him lots of questions, and you'll find out all about that in just a second. And we go from what actual rabies is, to the history of rabies, how it's being tackled, and some of the projects that Andre and the team are involved with. Now, don't forget, if you like the videos, please like, subscribe, share, and even comment on our videos. Tell us what you want to see from the world of conservation. And you can follow us on all the social media platforms, and our handle is @CCF Cheetah. And as always, you can always find loads of information about all the holistic conservation efforts that the Cheetah Conservation Fund is very active in around the world. And you can find details of that, as well as loads of free downloadable resources. And that's on our website, which is at cheetah.org. So without further ado, let's go across to South Africa and catch up with Dr. Andre. So Andre, welcome to Cheetah TV, and thanks very much for sparing the time. Now we're talking about GARC, and we're talking about the conservation collaborations, and sometimes these type of things, they're not really understood, because it's not all about cheetah biology or ecology or whatever. There's so many facets to it, and today we're kind of hedging towards the rabies side, because obviously your organization is so involved with rabies. To start off, could you just explain what rabies is? Because a lot of the time when people hear this, they think it's, you know, something from the past, but it's very much something of the present.
Thanks, Brian. So you're not wrong in saying rabies is something of the past, because it is one of, if not the oldest known disease to man. We actually have anecdotal evidence that suggests there was this presence of a disease, which by all accounts is rabies, in about 3,500 BC. So this truly is an ancient disease. And what's even more scary, in my opinion, is it's been vaccine preventable since the 1800s, but it's not eliminated. Today, this disease, which is caused by a virus that is transmitted via the saliva of infected animals, is still endemic in up to 150 countries around the world. And it's estimated that it causes 59,000 human fatalities every year. And to put that into perspective, that's one person about every 9 minutes succumbing to a disease that's entirely vaccine preventable, which is scary.
It certainly is, and it certainly puts things into perspective, that this isn't such a niche thing. It affects so many different people, and not just people. So because we're, fundamentally we're a cheetah organization, but we go way beyond that. And when we talk about the collaborations, we're talking about different organizations, different individuals, even sometimes. So how would you see that GARC fits into the picture of this collaboration?
Oh, thanks so much, Brian. That's a very interesting question, and it's not one that's difficult to answer. So when we think about rabies as a disease, it is primarily transmitted by domestic dogs. But we've also seen a few examples where dogs can transmit this disease to cohabiting animal populations. And we've seen situations where rabies has been introduced into wildlife populations. For example, the Ethiopian wolf the wild dog in South Africa. And there's always that risk when you have dog populations living on the boundary with wildlife species of that introduction of the disease into those populations. But I would argue to say that involving rabies elimination actually has an even more fundamental impact, because these types of activities actually build community trust and partnership as well. And by building this trust with community members, you actually establish a very vital component to both public health, but also conservation efforts.
Yeah, and again, it kind of broadens the understanding as well, because you mentioned the different species, the different wildlife. I know that when I was working in Namibia, kudu was one of the animals that were quite susceptible, and that kind of goes into the food chain. So you're going all different. It's the wildlife, it's the food chain, it's kind of everything, and this thing could kind of snowball coming out. And you mentioned the communities, and I'm so keen on community-based conservation efforts as well, but it's also the One Health type thing that we're doing it. It's the engagement of the communities. So what are some of the practicalities that you have to take into account when you're empowering these communities?
So I think it's important to understand from our perspective, or from GARC's perspective, how we look at the situation. So GARC is a non-profit organization that aims towards the elimination of dog-transmitted rabies. But our modality is unique, and it's reflected in our slogan, which is ending rabies, empowering communities. Because as an organization, we acknowledge that at the community level, there are stakeholders in place. There are people that have that trust and relationship with communities that are working to make a difference. And our approach is to build their capacity and strengthen their ability to lead their own rabies elimination efforts. And to us, that is a truly sustainable manner with which rabies can be eliminated, but also how animal welfare can be improved in the long run. And we do that by filling critical gaps that organizations need. We provide tools, resources, and expert guidance that allows these groups to essentially be stronger, better versions of themselves.
And I think it's so empowering for organizations like you and like us, because I think fundamentally you're building trust in the communities where they've had a lot of the communities that I've come across, that in their history they've got lots of reasons not to trust, so and it takes time. So I know that GARC has worked with CCF in Namibia and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about how the type of support, how it's impacted the team in Namibia in your eyes?
Absolutely. So I think when we talk about the support provided to CCF, I can essentially mention the support we provide to any interested stakeholder. And that support addresses kind of two critical gaps that we've noticed quite often. And the first is at the staff or at the personal level, where quite often organizations rely on dedicated, motivated volunteers. And you definitely want to foster that passion, but at the same time, you want to empower those individuals with the right knowledge and right information so that when they engage with communities, they're providing the correct information. And at that level, we provide educational courses that are offered free of charge to individuals. And through a pathway of completing these courses, they become recognized as a dog health champion, a reputable source of information. And at the organizational level, one of the biggest caveats with any programmatic activity is the lack of data. Not necessarily generating data, but data that shows where an organization works, what impact they're making, how far do they travel to deliver the activities that they do. And CCF, for example, is a prime example of an organization that looked at these resources and truly embraced them and said, this is going to help us go that extra mile. So not only did they benefit from these tools and resources, but they also use those things to their advantage because they use that to foster a collaboration with the national government of Namibia. With their local government, they're now able to engage actively and have a conversation and show exactly where do they work. And these kinds of activities are, to us, success stories. And that's why we feature our users around the world. And CCF was actually one of our most recent featured users because we believe these stories should be celebrated. They shouldn't be kept behind closed locks and to ourselves. People need to know about these groups and what they're doing. And to me, CCF was a prime example of an organization that embraces opportunities and then uses that to their advantage. And it's for us a pleasure to work with groups like that.
Yeah. And again, it's the strength of collaboration. And you mentioned the data and your database and all the research and stuff that you've done. A lot of people, they kind of sniff a little bit at data, but data is so important. Especially when you're working as an NGO, a non-government organization, thinking that you don't have to work with governments when we both know that couldn't be further from the truth. And what governments need is they need proof. And the proof is in the data, both the negative and the positive, identifying the problems and proving that the solutions work or are working. So that's really good. And I don't apologize for keep on bringing up the phrase of conservation through collaboration, because I think that's the lifeblood of conservation. And viewers and listeners have heard me say it so many times, but it's also always nice to hear somebody else's opinion. So how would you sum up the value of collaborations between all different types of organizations, not just CCF and GARC, but the other organizations that we work with?
I mean, Brian, I think we can't overemphasize the importance. I always like to say at the most basic level, the world is a pretty big place, bigger than 1 or 2 or 10 organizations. But there's always an opportunity for collaboration. There's always an opportunity for groups to work together, especially when it's working towards a common goal. And this is the type of mentality we want to foster as an organization, especially with rabies, which is a disease that sits at that intersection between public health, animal health, but also community well-being. And you could argue and say, well, collaboration is vital from the national level all the way to the community level. But it's truly at the community level where it makes the biggest impact. And we're actually establishing programs like our most recent one, Communities Against Rabies, which aims at unifying these stakeholders towards a common goal. And I don't know if this ever been used on Cheetah TV. I'd be surprised if it hasn't, but there's the African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. It's maybe an overplayed quote, but it's true. It 100% makes sense to say there's opportunities for collaboration if we agree that the common goal is more important than the individual parts of it.
Well, I can't disagree, and yes, that proverb, I should have a tattoo of it really, because I use it so often. But it's a fascinating subject. You know, I I think everybody wishes that we were both out of a job, that cheetahs are fine and there was no rabies, but you know that's not the world that we live in. But it's so wide and so varied, and we've only just touched upon it really. You know, we've just scratched the surface today. So how can people get involved, and how can they learn more about GARC, the work that you do, and that type of thing?
Oh, thanks so much, Brian. So I think the first thing people always say, like, yeah, what can I do? What can I do as an individual? And the first thing I always say is empower yourself with the latest information. Learn about rabies. And GARC actually has, as I mentioned earlier, a series of free online courses that takes people from knowing what is rabies, how is it transmitted, but also covers key topics like how can I inform other people of what I've learned? How do I engage people? And to me, that's the number one priority. Is we should never be too old to learn something new, especially when it's freely available. Within organizations that want to engage with GARC, we are always looking for partnerships and collaborations. And it's as simple as reaching out to GARC and engaging with us to find out how can we assist, how can we provide tools and resources to their betterment. And the final step, anybody that says, how can I get involved? Every year on the 28th of September, we celebrate World Rabies Day. It's an opportunity for people around the world to raise their voice and say, rabies is still a problem, but we are here, we are doing something about it. And anybody can take part in World Rabies Day, no matter what scale or intensity, what activity they're doing. Anybody can contribute their voice to World Rabies Day. And we always encourage people, make your voice known during that time.
That's great, and I encourage everybody to learn about it, because one way or the other, it's going to affect us if we don't act and if we don't support each other. You know, what goes around comes around, and I'll make sure that all the web address and everything is available to everybody. And if anybody can't get in touch with you for any reason, then you know, drop us a line here at CCF and we'll put you in touch. But Andre, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's fascinating the work that you do, and it's our absolute pleasure to be one of your partners on the ground and also here on Cheetah TV. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian, and thank you for the opportunity to take part today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you as well.
So huge thanks to Andre for sparing the time. You can see that GARC is so busy around the world working with other organizations to eliminate the threat of rabies. And I do encourage you to visit their website, which is rabiesalliance.org. There you can find out how you can get involved. And like Andre said, in September on World Rabies Day, would be an ideal opportunity for you to get involved. And you can also have a look at them on social media as well, see what they're up to. And you can search for them on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Rabies Alliance. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on our channel. It really does help us grow, and it helps us get the message across through these collaborations, and how important everybody is to pull their weight to save ecosystems, species, and to eliminate disease as well. Now you can follow us on all the social media platforms, our handle, which is at CCF Cheetah, and loads of information and free downloads and resources for teachers and loads of other stuff you can find on our website, which is at cheetah.org. So thank you very much for joining me. And from me, Brian Badger, until the next time on Cheetah TV, thank you.